So I've been talking about this for a little while, and I know most people don't care. I know it's not the most important thing about the iPhone, but when it comes to settings like this, I feel like Apple wants to make a big deal out of it, so that way you feel a certain way about it, which sometimes that actually works. So here we're talking about the always on display, which really isn't a big deal. I remember my first Android device that had an always on display back in 2013. It was a Motorola Moto X. We are now in March of 2024, and I still don't have an iPhone with an always on display because I'm not paying extra money for a Pro phone to get a feature like this that's been around for over a decade. But what exactly is an always on display? Apple defines always on display as always on display dims the lock screen while keeping information like time, widgets, and notifications visible using minimal power. That minimal power is a result of the fact that these Pro phones have the LPTO display that allows the refresh rate to scale between 120 and some lower number. I'm not sure exactly what that other smaller number is because I don't think the iPhone allows you to explicitly display what the current refresh rate is on the phone, the way that many Android devices allow you to see exactly what the refresh rate is. But either way, it doesn't really matter. Let's go to the next screen to get a little more information about Apple's versioning of the always on display. So up at the top, you have the exact same verbiage, and it says the display will turn off automatically to save battery life when not in use. Well, if I want it on all the way, why are you telling me that it's going to turn off? If I've explicitly say I want it always on, why are you telling me that the phone is now going to decide when to turn it off? I don't like that. Now, right beneath that, we have the option to customize, which when Apple uses the word customize, we know it really doesn't mean much of anything. So the reason that first toggle there is present, show wallpaper, is because when the always on display was first released on the iPhone 14 Pro last year, it only would dim your actual wallpaper. It wouldn't just give you a black screen with some information on it. So users were getting confused about what was actually happening. They were like, what's wrong with my phone? Like the screen is dim, but I don't have any notifications. Or do I have any notifications? I'm confused. So Apple tried to do something that just didn't need to be done. And they now kind of had to not roll it back, but at least give the user the option to say, okay, let me just turn this wallpaper off. So it's just a black screen with some letters on it or a clock or, whatever. Then you're also given the option to show notifications. Cool. I guess some people will want to turn that off. I would hope that if the screen is locked, which it should be when it's in this mode, no sensitive information is being shown. I think you can change that in settings to allow you to choose what information is shown when the screen is actually locked. So cool. If you want to turn off all notifications, you have the option to do so. And then there's the actual toggle to turn off or on, always on display. Now, in my opinion, this next thing is technically a subset of always on display, but it's an entirely different setting because the way Apple chose to implement always on. Always on is a Pro feature. Standby is available on the Pro and the non-Pro iPhone. So what exactly is standby? Standby will turn on when iPhone is placed on its side while charging to show information like widgets, photo frames, and clocks. Sounds very similar. We'll do a frame-by-frame comparison in a few moments, but let's see what options do we get when it comes to standby. So we can have it automatically set. When set to automatic, the display will intelligently turn off when iPhone is not in use and the room is dark. Okay, and I understand why that's an option. Also, this sounds similar to the always on display where it said that it will turn off automatically if it detects that it's not in use to save battery life, whatever the verbiage was. But over there, it's like, okay, I'm explicitly telling the phone to turn always on display on. I don't want it to turn off when it feels like it should turn off. I've told it what to do, and Apple is telling you that it's going to do what Apple wants it to do. And then you have two other options, turn off after 20 seconds or never. Now, I didn't tap never, and I should have, just to see exactly what the verbiage was underneath of it. But never isn't an option on the regular iPhone 15 because it doesn't have always on. So you had to, or I'll say Apple had to separate these settings, even though in my opinion, standby is just a subset of always on because, and I'm saying because they had to separate them because you don't have that first option on the regular one. So they had to make a mess out of it, in my opinion. But there was one more thing that I wanted to show. So like I said, in my opinion, standby is a subset of always on. And I wanted to just give a frame by frame comparison of the actual verbiage. So on the left side, we have always on. And I know we've already gone through this, but just wanted to put them next to each other. Always on display dims the lock screen while keeping information like time, widgets, and notifications visible while using minimal power. Meanwhile, on the right side, standby will turn on when iPhone is placed on its side while charging to show information like widgets, photo frames, and clocks. So I feel like they had to put the text out of order so that way it wasn't just copy and paste, because essentially it's the same thing. So on the always on, the first thing that they mentioned is time. Over here on the right side, we have clocks. All right, same thing. Then the second thing on always on display is widgets. Over here, the first thing mentioned is widgets. And then over on the left side, we have notifications, but on the right side, we have photo frames. Now, they had to, I feel like, throw in something different, like just to make it appear to be a different thing. But essentially, they're the same thing. It's just one pops on when you're charging it versus the other one. And I know I keep repeating myself, but standby is simply a subset of always on. However, they had to separate them because always on is not an option on the regular iPhone 15. So here we are 16 years later after the first iPhone, and man, that is a lot. And Apple's still calling always on a pro level feature, or started calling it a pro level feature, not that it's been around this entire time. The last thing I'll say about standby, and we went through the little settings that were there. Can I choose what it shows? I don't think that I can. I mean, I know I plugged it up with my non-pro phone and it started showing me photos. And I'm like, I don't want that. I just want it to show the time. And I don't like having to just draw the comparison. But when we do stuff like this, it's, well, you have to just look at the alternative. And the alternative is Android. And with Android, you can go in for your always on display. And different vendors have done different things. But you are able to choose to do something when the always on display option is there. And with the iPhone, you will go ahead and happily spend your $1,000, or let's say, because we're talking about pro phones, $1,000 plus, and Apple continues to feel like they need to hold your hand and tell you what you want when you are trying to configure the phone that you spent your money on. So I still have my iPhone 15. It is not my primary device. It's sitting right here, but it is just sitting right there. I think I've rambled on long enough. Always on display. Yet another thing that Apple thinks they know how to do better than you.